There are nights in Hollywood that never end. Some fade quietly into rumor. Some sink, deep enough that even time cannot reach them. November 28, 1981. The Pacific was calm, almost tender, as if holding its breath for what it was about to take. A yacht named Splendour drifted near Catalina Island, its lights trembling over the water like the last flicker of a dying film reel. On board were three familiar faces: Robert Wagner, Christopher Walken, and the woman the world once called the girl with the sad eyes, Natalie Wood. To millions, she was the eternal ingenue, the heartbeat of West Side Story, the girl who danced between innocence and tragedy with effortless grace. Hollywood had adored her since she was a child, molded her into a symbol of beauty, fragility, and perfection. But beneath that glow was something restless, a silence she carried even in laughter.
That night, she vanished. No one saw her fall. No one heard her scream. By morning, her body floated a mile from the yacht, face turned toward the sky she used to perform beneath. The world called it an accident, but the ocean never explained. And Hollywood, as always, preferred silence to truth. They said she feared water all her life. Perhaps the sea was only reclaiming what destiny had already promised.
Before she ever saw the glitter of studio lights, Natalie Wood was just a small girl from San Francisco, born Natalia Nikolaevna Zakharenko in 1938, to Russian immigrant parents chasing the American dream that never quite belonged to them. Her mother, Maria, was a woman both fierce and fragile, a believer in omens, prophecies, and the cruel poetry of fate. She whispered to Natalie that the stars could bless her or destroy her, depending on how brightly she dared to shine. Her father, a craftsman who found more comfort in vodka than in words, built furniture by day and silence by night. When Natalie was 4, her mother brought her to a film set, a small local shoot. The story goes that the director needed a child to cry on command. Maria leaned in, told Natalie to imagine something terrible, and when the cameras rolled, the tears came instantly. That moment, brief, haunting, was her first step into the world that would one day consume her. But there was another memory she would never escape. On a different afternoon, her mother took her to a fortune teller. The old woman looked at the little girl's palm and said softly,
"Beware of dark water. One day it will take you." From that day on, Natalie feared the ocean. Even pools made her uneasy. She could not swim, and she refused to let her feet touch the deep. Yet her mother's ambition was stronger than her fear. She told Natalie that the camera would protect her, that fame could rewrite destiny. Hollywood became their religion, and Maria its most devoted believer. Natalie learned early that a smile could be armor, that obedience could be survival. Her childhood wasn't a sequence of summers and laughter. It was a carefully lit audition, every expression rehearsed, every dream directed. Behind the soft curls and dimples, there was always a trace of something watchful in her eyes, the look of a child who already knew that love and danger often wear the same face. She didn't yet know that her life would unfold like the films she starred in, shimmering on the surface, but beneath it, a slow, inevitable drowning.
Hollywood embraced Natalie Wood before she even understood what it meant to be wanted. At 16, she wasn't just another actress. She was the face of the post-war dream. Soft, luminous, fragile, the kind of beauty that made America feel safe in its illusions. But beneath that polished surface, there was a girl learning how to breathe inside someone else's fantasy.
Her breakthrough came in Rebel Without a Cause, 1955. Opposite James Dean, she wasn't just playing a teenager trapped between love and rebellion, she was that girl. The camera adored her, but it also exposed her. The trembling of her hands, the ache behind her smile. Critics called her performance radiant, yet those close to her said it was the first time she stopped acting and started confessing. The studio saw a gold mine. They dressed her in silk, cast her in roles that shimmered with tragedy, Splendour in the Grass, West Side Story, Gypsy. Each film polished her image, but stripped another piece of her away. She once said in an interview, "Sometimes I feel like I'm watching a stranger live my life."
By the early 1960s, she was at the top. 3 Oscar nominations, the envy of every ingenue in Hollywood. But with fame came the quiet kind of loneliness that only stars understand, being surrounded by faces, yet unseen by anyone. She found love, or what looked like it, in Robert Wagner, another product of the studio dream. Their marriage was a perfect photograph, the golden couple, young and flawless. But beneath the flashbulbs, jealousy brewed. Wagner's charm on camera turned to suspicion behind closed doors. Their love burned brightly, then collapsed under its own heat. They divorced. Then years later, fate pulled them back together, older, wearier, believing that perhaps time could fix what youth had broken. It didn't. By the late 1970s, Natalie was no longer the ingenue. She was a woman who had lived too many versions of herself. The audience still saw a star, but those who looked closer noticed the distance in her eyes, the same distance that comes when you realize the role you've been playing is also your life. She smiled for the cameras always, but sometimes, when the flash faded, you could see it, the faint shimmer of water in her gaze.
It was Thanksgiving weekend, 1981. The ocean was still. Too still, as if the world had fallen into a breathless pause. Natalie Wood, now 43, boarded her yacht Splendour with her husband, Robert Wagner, her co-star, Christopher Walken, and the yacht's captain, Dennis Davern. The trip was meant to be a quiet escape, a short retreat from the cameras and questions, from a life that had become too public, too scripted. But that night, the script went wrong. The yacht floated near Catalina Island, its deck dimly lit, the air thick with wine and unspoken words. Witnesses from nearby boats later said they heard voices, laughter first, then arguing, then something else. A thud, a silence, then only the sound of the Pacific. At 11:05 p.m., a neighbor on another boat heard what he thought was a woman's cry, a faint, frightened, "Help me," carried by the wind, but no one could tell where it came from. On Splendour, Wagner would later claim he thought Natalie had gone to bed. Walken said he returned to his cabin and shut the door. The captain said he was ordered to stay out of it. By dawn, Natalie was gone. Her body was found hours later, floating near a rocky cove, wrapped in a red down jacket, barefoot, her hair tangled like seaweed in the current. The small dinghy from the yacht was drifting nearby, its rope untied, its oars unused. The coroner's report called it accidental drowning, but nothing about that morning felt accidental. Her wrists were bruised, her cheek marked. The ocean around her was calm. Too calm to justify panic. Hollywood woke to the news with disbelief. Tabloids printed the photograph of her final smile beside the words, "Lost at sea." But those who knew her, truly knew her, remembered her lifelong fear of deep water. She would never have gone swimming alone, not in the dark, not in the cold. The media mourned her as another tragic beauty, another fallen star. But beneath the headlines, something darker rippled. That night on Splendour was supposed to be quiet. Instead, It became a riddle written in waves, and every answer seemed to sink just beyond reach. The official story was simple. She drank too much, she slept, she drowned. But Hollywood has always known, simplicity is a disguise. In the years that followed, the truth began to fracture. Dennis Davern, the yacht's captain, changed his story. He said there had been an argument that night, loud, violent, between Natalie and Wagner. He claimed Wagner was jealous, accusing Walken of something unspoken, something that burned beneath every shared glance. Then came the crash, the sound of something breaking, perhaps a glass, perhaps trust. Davern said Wagner told him Natalie was missing hours before they called the Coast Guard, that he had ordered him not to turn on the searchlights, and that when he looked into Wagner's eyes, he saw something colder than fear, acceptance. When questioned again decades later, Walken remained elusive. He said he didn't know what happened, that people drink, they argue, accidents occur. But his voice trembled slightly when reporters asked about the sound of the ocean that night. It was dark, he said. You couldn't see much. You could only hear the water.
And then there was the body, the bruises, the marks, the untouched dinghy. If she had tried to leave, why were her fingernails clean? Why was the boat rope untied but uncoiled, as if someone else had released it gently into the sea? In 2011, the case was reopened. The Los Angeles County coroner changed the cause of death from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. The whispers grew louder. Police called Wagner a person of interest. But no charges were ever filed. Too much time, too much silence. Hollywood, ever skilled in performance, simply turned the page. Interviews were edited, scripts rewritten, and somewhere between gossip and grief, the truth drowned quietly, like she did. The ocean kept its promise. It said nothing. The same silence that swallowed her that night became the soundtrack of every retelling, an echo beneath every headline. Because in Hollywood, it's not lies that keep you alive. It's the stories you refuse to tell.
Morning broke over Catalina Island like a slow confession. The sky turned pale silver, the ocean soft and indifferent, as if nothing had happened at all. The Splendour drifted quietly, its name now cruelly ironic, and somewhere below that stillness, the sea carried what no one else would, her truth. Natalie Wood's story ended not with a scream, but with silence. It wasn't the kind of ending Hollywood writes, no grand score, no redemption arc, only the echo of something unfinished. Her face lingered on posters, her laughter replayed in late-night reruns, her name whispered in the same breath as mystery. Those who knew her still remember the fear, her refusal to swim, her trembling near open water. It wasn't vanity or weakness, it was prophecy. And when the ocean finally came for her, it did not rage, it simply opened like a curtain.
40 years have passed, and still the question remains. What truly happened on that boat? Was it accident, anger, or something too human to name? No one can say. No one ever will. Hollywood moved on, as it always does, dressing tragedy in sequins, turning silence into spectacle. But the sea remembers. It always does. Because some stars don't fade, they sink, slowly, beautifully, until all that's left is a reflection trembling on dark water. And when the waves touch the shore, if you listen carefully, you can still hear her name carried by the wind, not a cry for help, but a whisper from the deep. The show is over. Let the silence begin.